Redrafting the now substantive motion. Do you want to talk through it? So the substantive motion, councillors, is before you. As if there's any errors to what was the wish, and
Would you like me to take you through that, or you?
yeah, Carol, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so A, B, C and D are the same. D you need because the council does consider and decide on the code of conduct. I mean, it's pretty self-evident when you look at the code of conduct, but we'll just keep that in as reassurance that you're not just having a code of conduct committee. Otherwise, if we take it out, it might read that you're only having a code of conduct committee if you go back later. Okay. So the code of E is the code of conduct committee that you've established, and it's not until when Robin scrolls down, that we get to the delegations to the chief executive. Just stop there under 3. That we have then removed the reference to in consultation with the mayor, and so has the 4. That's authorising the chief executive to determine the remuneration. And then we've just noted the 75% under F and G, and then the amendments that were made to the gift register are under H, and in I, that's the amendment that I proposed, in which Councillor Baldock originally moved, which was that just to line up your register of interest forms, we're adding into 9.1 that you do need to declare non-pecuniary interests on your form. So it just, everything lines up. And then there's just another renumbering of that original E now becomes F. So that's it.
Thank you, Carol. Very helpful indeed. Councillor Baldock, you are the mover of the substantive motion. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking to the substantive motion, I do have real concerns about code of conducts and the way they're used. The research out of Massey, I think everyone should read our code of conduct once and then read the research out of Massey twice, because that reminds people that code of conducts can be used to chill debate, to threaten, to discourage particularly those people who are new from exploring or challenging. And we need to be really, really careful that while our democracy mustn't be destructive in the way that we see politics so often, it must be robust. People must be able to challenge ideas. Important for me, and I do think it's a flaw, is that truth should be a defence in all situations. You know, if a statement is true, then I don't believe that anyone should be subject to a code of conduct. If a true statement brings us into disrepute, then it is the truth we need to change. We don't need to punish the person that tells it so. You know, if the emperor has no clothes, and this is embarrassing for the empire, yeah, we don't punish the little boy. That's not what the fable tells us. And in this regard, I've tried to depoliticize as much as possible the code of conduct process. But as my barrister would tell me, in this particular case, I have special standing. I have been the subject of 2 code of conduct complaints, and I participated in the adjudication around a code of conduct complaint. I've been fortunate that my batting record is 3-0, but I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good when we get to a code of conduct situation. So I will support this as a reasonable attempt, but I think we have further to go. And hopefully, as we progress through this triennium, and should we all be re-elected, we should all know each other enough and understand each other enough and be in a situation of having confidence in each other enough to revise the code of conduct for the next triennium. But at the moment, I'm happy to support it as a reasonable attempt in this current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. Anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Baldock?
I'm very pleased to hear Councillor Robson's support, and I take note of what he's saying about truth. The issue is about, and as always, around the definition of truth. But we do have qualified privilege at this table for things we say in this chamber. The Code of Conduct deals with things we say more likely or say or write outside of this chamber. And it's the same for Parliament. You don't have any privilege if you go, defaming people or whatever. Whilst in your own mind you might think you're just simply telling truth, you may actually be defaming, but you don't have that protection in Parliament if you do it outside of the chamber, and the same is true here. I'm just trying to find the standing order, but I can't, but it does say you have that qualified privilege so long as it's not with malice, so long as you're not doing it. And we all know we can sometimes use truth in a way that is not in the benefit of the city or the benefit of the person's hearing or anything. So we have to be careful. And I think the things you've raised, Councillor Robson, are going to be dealt with, I think, if we can establish that independent committee. And I'm really pleased he made those amendments and that we can perhaps now pass this with the majority needed, and then have the recommendations from the Chief Executive to see those people established. And hopefully we don't have to use them. Hopefully we do grow in our understanding of what our responsibilities are in the code and the standing orders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. Any other comments, councillors? That being the case, I'll put the substantive motion to you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Abstentions? And carried. Thank you very much. I beg your pardon? Who's that? Ah. Right. This moves us on to 10.5, Council, the waste activity update. Rebecca, hi, thank you for joining us. And bless you.
Through.
I'll just get Nick to lead in. Thanks, Nick.
I'll just introduce the piece. So the waste activity update, we've got Rebecca, Catherine and Rob here, who you've all met before. I suggest we take the report as read. We're happy to take any questions, and we do want to put up 2 or 3 slides, 3 slides I think it is, with new information, new collateral to put to you, which I hope will add intelligence prior to the decision making, which is now just over a month away. If I can just hand over to Rebecca to run through that information. I think you had a couple of tweaks in the report as well, or you wanted to call out a few numbers. Thank you.
Yes, I did. Hi, thank you. Just a couple of things with the report. So page 3, under Stakeholder Engagement, we had listed that we would be undertaking to prepare a media release on the 6th of July. A decision was made not to do that release because there has been a reasonable amount of coverage in the media about where we are in the evaluation process within the project, and when council will be receiving some recommendations to consider in late August. So that hasn't been completed. The other thing was on page 7, in the public feedback, point 31, we quoted 88% of respondents to the Talking Trash survey stating they were happy with the glass collection service. That was actually 83. That was a typo, so apologies for that. So just moving on, if you can just go back one. Yep, quite sensitive. So we just wanted to cover this morning the Curbside Waste Project, where we're at with the RFP evaluation, and where we are with stakeholder engagement and community feedback regarding that. I also wanted to give you an update on our glass collection service and also the annual swap survey waste composition results that we've recently received. So in terms of the RFP evaluation, the key points which we've discussed before is that it's the joint procurement with Western Bay. The RFP closed in March of this year. A procurement evaluation team is currently going through the responses. We did experience some delays because of COVID, which has pushed out the date for the recommendations coming to you from June to the end of August. But at this point in time, everything is on track in terms of that evaluation. So there's no... Oh, sorry. A bit louder. Oh. Sorry. So yeah, everything's on track with that at the moment. With regards to the timeline, this is just a little bit of a reminder of where we've come from. So 2016, we adopted our waste plan. In 2018, the proposal for council-led curbside waste collection services was considered as part of the LTP. In March this year, the RFP closed concerning that, and again, we'll be considering, or you will be considering recommendations on that in August. So just moving on to stakeholder engagement. So just focusing on the blue section of the figure on the screen. So we've recently been meeting with those that had requested, the groups that had requested the referendum earlier in the year. We've been meeting with some interested community groups, so they are not necessarily affiliated with the referendum groups, but they're either supportive or not supportive or somewhere in between in terms of what the proposal is. We have been undertaking some more market research about what people currently pay and what services that they use, so that we can compare that to what the price per household will look like at the end of August. And we've been doing and having some more conversations and doing some more work around the service design considerations and what will be I guess considered as part of a default service, and what additions or bespoke services might be required moving forward. So just on the excuse me, just on the referendum group engagement, so we've met with individuals from the Papamar Residents Ratepayers Association, the Welcome Bay Rating Advocates, the Citizens Advocacy Tauranga Group, and Te Papa Residents Group. So the key individuals that we've met, if you're interested, are Philip Brown, Richard Prince, Rob Patterson, and Morris O'Reilly. They haven't necessarily, I would say, been representing the views of their groups as a whole, but they're certainly individuals that speak to the concerns of their communities that they represent, if that makes sense. So we have scheduled to meet the Gretton Ratepayers Alliance key contact, Jim Sherlock, in 2 weeks' time, and we're still working on touching base with Bill Faulkner and Mike O'Neill from Tauranga and Mount Ratepayers Associations. So I guess there's 3 key concerns that they've talked to us about, just to highlight with you. They've raised that we have consulted through the LTP on some modelled costs of $250 plus GST per household. Their concern is that the consultation hasn't been done on what the costs that have been confirmed by the market through the RFP process are. So that's one thing to just keep in mind. Another was that they would like to see a delay in the August decision and the council consult further with the community. And they don't necessarily believe that the cost of the service, which we have identified as being $250 plus GST, is realistic based on the research that they've undertaken themselves. So what I would say is that none of the feedback that we've received is anything that we haven't already been aware of and have been considering. So we will just continue to work on making sure that these areas are well covered when we come back to you in August and give you enough information to consider whether or not you think that any further work needs to be done to meet the expectations of this particular segment of the community. So just moving on to the glass service. So just wanted to give you some high-level figures on that. So our target for the curbside waste collection and glass collection overall from the city, when we embarked on the curbside glass collection project, was 6,000 tonnes per annum. So in the 1920 year, we've actually exceeded that, which is fabulous. The results really show that the community have engaged in the service and are using it. Yeah, so just wanted to highlight that with you. Are we taking questions now? Yeah.
Thank you. Other members of the team, do you want to finish off the presentation first of all before questions? Or would you like to take questions now?
We do have another slide on glass, so I'm happy to keep going.
I think if we finish the presentation, then we can go to questions for the whole lot. Thank you very much.
Okay. So this graph here just shows the difference in the private sector collection to the curbside council-led collection. So the blue in 16-17 and 17-18 is the private sector curbside glass collection, glass tonnages that were recycled, and the purple is the glass that was collected through council curbside collection and recycled. So what you can see is the 16-17 year was the last full year of a private-led glass collection service. The 19-20 year is the first year of the council-led curbside glass collection service. The green in the middle is the tonnage that goes through the transfer stations from the Western Bay of Plenty council area. What you can also see is that the tonnage that's going through the transfer stations in 2019-20 has come back down to very close to what it was in the 16-17 financial year. And you can clearly see that there's been a significant increase in participation in glass recycling at the curbside since the introduction of the council-led service. And just moving on to our most recent waste composition swap survey analysis of wheelie bins and rubbish bags. So wheelie bins being rubbish wheelie bins and rubbish bags. You can see that the total waste, of the total waste collected, almost 65% could be recycled or composted, and 35% at this point in time would be sent to landfill because there isn't, I guess, diversion opportunities for those types of waste. Yep, and you go to the next one. And so waste composition from the transfer station, so 48.1% of waste is divertible. That's currently going through the transfer stations, and just over 50% is waste that cannot otherwise be diverted at this point. We do these surveys on an annual basis. There hasn't been a significant change in the waste composition, largely because there has been really no change to the solutions available to people to divert waste from landfill, other than glass. So you would have seen in the report on page 6, we talked to the difference in the glass ending up in landfill from curbside collection. So in June 2018, we spiked at 8.1%. and in the latest survey we're back down to 4.1%, so that's 1% less than what it was in the 2016-17 financial year. And that's everything.
Thank you.
Oh, the next, yeah. That's fine, yep. That's all.
Well, good, great, Rebecca. Thank you very much, and team. Councillors, questions? Councillor Robson, Councillor Hughes, and Councillor Baldock in that order. Thank you.
Yeah, look, thank you, Rebecca, as on point as always. Just quickly, Marty Hoffert, I think, was quoted in the paper this morning as saying that our waste composition was similar to other cities. Is that an accurate statement? Bay of Plenty Times article, I believe. I don't know which of the many esteemed and well-respected journalists wrote the article that the Bay of Plenty Times has, but there was an article in the Bay of Plenty Times. Is that Mr. Hoffert's statements accurate?
I saw that as well and thought we need to go and have a chat with Marty and have a look at that, like just to quantify and qualify that statement. So he might be talking about composition in the transfer station, or he might be talking about composition through the curbside, and that isn't clear from the article. So we just need to go and talk to him about that and just qualify it.
Can I get your view? From your expert view, is our waste composition significantly different from other metropolitan authorities, as you understand it?
The amount that Tauranga sends to landfill is more, significantly more. The composition, can you talk to that?
So the composition, organics is a real focus target area for a lot of councils, hence the introduction of food waste. But so broadly speaking, it comes around to the tonnes that is, or per capita rate, as Rebecca has said. We have a high per capita rate for tonnes to landfill, but the organics is the higher volume. And then we do, with the other specific breakdown of those, we still do have an overall divertible waste material that can be recovered. Generally speaking, ours is higher than other councils. That's a very general. I'd have to give you more specific data to be able to speak to it more accurately.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Just referring to the $250, we're still looking at variations though, aren't we, along that spectrum for people who throw less or more? Is that...
Yeah, so that's part of the RFP
Yeah.
evaluation. So we can't really talk to it in detail because we're still bound by that procurement process.
Yep.
But that is still being considered.
Just supplementary. Has that been conveyed to the people that you've been talking to? Yeah, great.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got three questions if I can. One of them, though, from that article, which I read also, where the man Marty said, reported by our Samantha, higher rates of food waste in landfill, for example, Auckland and Hamilton, so higher rates in Auckland and Hamilton, could reflect Tauranga's long-running efforts to educate residents about composting and worm farms. So it does need to be clarified, I think.
I agree.
Thank you.
We only saw it this morning as well.
Yeah,
so.
and it's Marty's comments, but not the reporter necessarily. But look, in the first thing of the scope, with this fine, the cost of it, I think some of the comments you've heard from others about needing to reconsult when we actually nail the cost down is valid, perhaps, because when you have pay as you throw still, as I see it in the negotiation, my understanding is that's going to add considerably to the cost if we go down that path. Now that the RFP's all over and you're into the negotiations, if we decide to make that something you can choose, it's always been my understanding that would escalate the cost because it's more flexibility. Can you comment on that? We might end up with the $500 quoted in the minutes of the MRRR organisation.
So when we come back in August, we will give you options And for example, it may be a POID, it may be a one model fits all, it will be, and you will be able to determine what will be the best outcome for the community on the information that we supply.
Or if
Yes.
I may, just on paragraph 15 about the, sorry, not 15, the 116 about the MUDs. 10% of all households being in that category, and the private roads and the named private roads and what we assume are just the right-of-ways, the unnamed one. If we deliver down them, there is going to be a more cost, isn't there, as well? Some of them you won't be able to deliver down, like mine. I would never think you'd come down mine, but some of them, if they sign the waiver, the contractors are going to take a little more charge there, are they?
We've factored that into the pricing schedule that we've used for the respondents to come back to. So, as I say, I can't talk to it too much, but the respondents have all been able to come back and give us the pricing for more bespoke services to sectors of the community that need it. But one thing we are looking at the moment is determining the scale of that. So we've had quite a lot of experience with the glass collection service that has really enabled us to drill down into, well, there might be 187 named private roads, but there might only be 15 of them that require that high level of service, and what does that look like in terms of relating that to the citywide service?
Yeah, but it also expands, to the unnamed private roads and then the MUDs, which is, your retirement villages and all that. So that's where the cost is going to flip around a little. Thank you for that. We'll look forward to August.
Thank you very much. Councillors Hollis, Morris and Robson in that order. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. One that came to me the other day from a constituent was, what is the process for the curbside glass once it's collected, and how much of that glass ends up in landfill?
So the glass is colour sorted on the curbside. It's dropped to the transfer station, still colour sorted. It's consolidated there and then transferred, still colour sorted, up to Auckland. It goes through a beneficiation plant to remove any contamination. Not that there is really any contamination, because we sort it at the curbside, and any contamination that's put in the crates is left on the curbside. Then it's transported to OI, who process the glass in their furnaces into new glass. So there's 100% of the glass that's is collected is recycled with the methodology that we use.
Thank you for that. That'll clear up some stuff in the community, so I'm happy with that. You mentioned data about these numbers coming from our city and other cities. It'd be really cool to get a detailed version of that at some time, because that'll clear up some other questions that are coming through. And the last one is, once the price is set, how long will it be fixed for?
I can start, and you can jump in. So the price will be set at a rate, and then on an annual basis, things like CPI and fuel and things like that will be considered. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Yeah, so it's the collection service is an 8-year contract plus right of renewal for 2 years. Yeah, do you want to just talk to it?
Then additional costs that we may see an increase for, specifically around refuse, would be the emissions trading scheme or the waste levy. So that would be passed on to consumers. Other than that, as Rebecca has spoken to, it's a CPI cost and so forth.
Sorry, just to follow on from that, when the curbside glass bin was put out, what did it start at and what is it now?
It started at 26, and my understanding is that it's at 34 now. Oh, 36, sorry. There was a couple of reasons for that, and we can bring those back to you at a future time if you would like that.
Just as long as it's recognised as that as an enormous concern of the community.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to that?
Thank you. Councillor Morris, followed by Councillors Robson and Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. In terms of the August decision, If elected members were of the mind that they wanted to inform or consult with the community again with the actual figures of the proposed service, would we adopt a special consultative procedure, and if so, how long would that potentially take, and how would that affect any implementation? And lastly, would it be useful to get a heads up as in terms of elected members thinking now, in terms of helping to write a report in August? Three questions there.
I'll speak to the issues around the consultation. So if the amount that comes through the contract tender evaluation is similar to what was originally consulted on the LTP, you don't have a legal obligation to consult. If it was materially different, just for example's sake, it was twice what you had consulted on, then that's quite different from what you've engaged with the community, and you should go back out to the community and have a further conversation. If you run the scenario that it's similar to what was originally consulted, then it's a political choice. Should you wish to go to consult, you don't, therefore, it's not an amendment to anything, so you don't have any obligation to comply with the special consultative process, so you don't have to do the sort of 4-week time frame, so you could choose whatever you saw as a reasonable time frame. So you may decide that sort of 2 or 3 weeks, so that's totally your call as to how you wish to go about that.
And lastly, would it be helpful to get a heads up from elected members, I don't know, perhaps through debate, if that was their intention, just in terms of writing a report for August?
Yes, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Robson, followed by Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, Rebecca, you obviously anticipated when I raised my hand around the glass issue. Could we go back to the second glass slide, please? That one there. Just trying to get my head around what that shows, and the bit that throws me a little bit is the WBOPDC Recycling Centre's green line. Is that outside Tauranga, that figure? That figure doesn't apply to Tauranga?
No, so the Western Bay glass tonnages is what is collected at their recycle centres, but they come through our transfer stations for them to be, for the glass to be consolidated and then taken up to Auckland.
Okay, so from a Tauranga perspective, if you can just explain it to me in words of half a syllable or less, it would be appreciated. If I look at 1617 and I take the bottom colour and the top colour, that's the Tauranga glass collection figure, and we don't have numbers to that, but it looks in the order of 4,000 odd, maybe slightly more. And if we take then in 1920 the bottom colour and the top colour, that would be where we currently are, which looks in the order of 6,000. Is that accurate?
Yep, 6,300 and whatever it was. 6,304.
So if those numbers could be circulated, that'd be great, because once one discounts for population growth and obviously the stress of living in the world since Donald Trump was elected, it looks like we've done a pretty good job in terms of increasing our glass collection, but the numbers would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
I'm just wondering if you could expand a little bit on the waste levy and the and what that potentially is at risk for the private sector, and what that means for diversion and making it more attractive for companies to divert waste.
Yep, so at the moment the waste levy is set at $10 per tonne. The government is looking at increasing it to between $50 or $60 per tonne. 2023, I think 2023. What that will do is it will create more funding both for businesses that work in the waste sector, but then also councils if the current distribution of funding is maintained. So at the moment 50% is put in a fund that's accessible to anyone in the community, including councils, to apply for waste projects. and then the other 50% is distributed to councils on a per capita basis. So what increasing the waste levy will do is put the cost of disposing to landfill up to a point where it will help aid diversion activities, recycling and composting, to become more viable. So things that were previously too expensive or much more expensive when you considered how much it costs to dispose of to landfill will become more appealing from a cost point of view.
Rebecca, Councillor Bulldog.
Thanks, Rebecca. Can I just add on to Councillor Robson's request that the graph, if we could have it without the green in, and then population adjusted, please. It would. Some of us are still having conversations with the public about the glass collection before we move on to the next one. Well, I don't suppose we can add in the COVID consumption during lockdown, but that is up until June, isn't it? Those figures. It's the financial year. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Robson.
Happy to move, Your Worship.
Very good. Thank you. Happy to second. Is there any more discussion? Did you want to talk?
Yeah,
to this,
look,
John,
just
or?
speaking to it, this is a pretty vexed topic. It's, you know, go back to a word that was used earlier. We can't depoliticise this. There is ideology in this. I think the staff are doing a great job at walking through this process. The engagement that you're taking with particular groups, the effort you're making to engage with them, I think this is becoming a bit of a model study in how council should approach certain topics. So, like, I thank you for the presentation. I thank you for the way you're approaching this topic, and I look forward to our discussion in August. Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you, and it's been a long journey since 2016 with our partners in Western Bay, and I note with some delight that they are looking at a similar process. In speaking to the August decision, my personal preference would be for the council to re-engage with the community once the actuals are known, because I think that it's when you consult on something that is several years away, it's harder to get the level of engagement with the community that you require, whereas if you're consulting with something that is potentially happening next year or year after, then you will generate a lot more engagement, and if we have the actuals rather than estimates, I think that will be a very good conversation to have with our community. So in August I would look to support re-engagement with the community on this proposal, which I do personally as a ratepayer support, but over to the community.
Just speaking to the substantive motion as its seconder, I just want to thank you all, Rebecca, Catherine and Rob, for the work you and the rest of the team have done on this. It really is substantial and it dates back some years, so congratulations to you all for getting us to this point at this time. I think the point that both Councillors Bullock and Robson make is quite valid. I think keeping it really simple, accurate and simple is probably the way to go. And you'll know from my email from last night the why we are doing this, as we mentioned last night at the Papamoa Ratepayers Association meeting, is going to be really important, I think, for everything, but this particularly, you know, not just the what, but the why is going to be really important. So thanks for all the work. Councillors, Councillor Arbery.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a potential counter view to Steve's, and that it really depends on what the tenders show for me. If it shows that it's going to be $20 per year, I don't think we'll need to consult, obviously. If it's in line with what we've previously consulted, then I think we can be pragmatic, and if it's going to be $250 on the money, then probably I don't see the need to go through that same consultation process again. But if it's substantially different to what we've consulted on in the past, then yeah, definitely we'd have to reconsult.
Thank you, Councillor Arbery. Councillors Bullock, followed by Councillor Granger, and Nick wants to just add something before we take the vote. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is a big issue. This is, as Councillor Morris said, started some time ago with the Environment Committee. And we've heard submissions through this annual plan where there is a lot of concern out there in the community about it. because it is hard to have one size fits all, and people don't, they only use a black rubbish bag every 3 weeks. So we may need to consult again if we're going to really take everyone with us. But I wouldn't make a decision yet on whether that is the case personally, since you're wanting some feedback. And similar to Councillor Arbery, I think depending on how the price comes out, really how much it may go up from the 250 if it does. But certainly pleased with the report, and thank you very much for your hard work.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, and sorry I'm a tad late here, but there's one question I did want to ask you, and it just comes back to your contact and conversation with existing contractors and wastes in general. How's that running at the moment? Is it still toing and froing? It's just that I've had the odd phone call from the odd one still that the satisfaction isn't to what they'd like it to be, but I just wondered where we're at with that. Just gives a bit of a feel of what is happening at the moment.
Sorry, can you just clarify, do you mean our contractors or waste contractors generally?
No, just waste contract, private waste contract.
In terms, sorry, can you
I wonder if you could
rehash your
just
question?
re-clarify the question, and again, thanks, Bill.
My concern was just with the existing waste contractors, the private contractors at the moment, in regards to what is happening, and of course, some of them have felt certainly not satisfied and not too happy with what has been happening. I just wondered if the conversation that you're still having, I presume, with them is okay. I just want to know, for me personally, where we're at with them.
I'll just clarify this. Is this around the tender process? They're not happy with the tender process? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think that just some of them, to be honest with you, are just not happy with what's happening because it's going to affect their business. I just wondered
because only one person's going to win.
Is
that what you mean?
I know what I mean, but I just want to know what conversation. Are we still conversing with them in the sense, the Tauranga City Council? I just want to know what is happening.
I'm just trying to help clarify the question for Rebecca. But I guess it's around the tender process and the fact that some will be disaffected by any decision.
Some will be for sure. I just wanted to know, just in general, what is happening in general. Not so much just the tendering. But.
Yep. So before the request for proposals went out, a number of conversations were had with waste operators in the city, getting them up to speed on what the council was looking to go to market for, and making sure that they were all aware that there was the way that the RFP was going to be structured was to enable anyone to basically put their solutions forward, put a response in. Since the RFP has been out and we've been evaluating, the conversations have essentially stopped, just because we're in that process of evaluating the responses to the RFP. So we're working with waste providers as we need to keep waste moving around the city. We were having lots of conversations with them through COVID because waste was an essential service. But specifically relating to what's coming next, the conversations have not been happening in the most recent times.
Perhaps that word solutions slipped in there. The fact of some of them may have different ideas and different ways and different directions we should look at and should take. I just wondered if there is still conversations with that in mind, or have we cut them short?
Yeah, no, so with the request for proposals, that then allows any of them that wanted to come forward and put a response to that request in with what their solutions are. So that opportunity was provided to them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kitty, and then on to final question, then on to Nick.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much. I've heard your presentations and they've been absolutely amazing, and you've come back to the community and answered all the questions, especially regarding who you've been back and speaking with, because obviously there are a lot of people that are really passionate about this, and I believe this is an opportunity. I'm all for going back to a consultation. It's an opportunity for us as a council to work with our community on basically a community-led outcome, which I think it's really important that we do that right now. So I'll be fully supporting anything that you can give us or help us with to do that. That'd be great. And if you can get back to us, when you have those outcomes or what that engagement looks like, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kitty. Nick, thank you.
Just a closing sort of comment or a couple of observations from me in terms of the conversation around cost. And if we do go out for consultation on cost, we also need to include the value proposition into that conversation. So I'm sort of looking at the team here. Is there then another piece of work that when we know what the cost is, that we can also present the value? And if you look at the purple bars, you see the increase in utilisation when the service is provided, and it's an assumption, but I think we can reasonably safely assume that the diversion rates will sort of follow some similar trajectory. So that's one factor, and the other factor in the value proposition is then also that the waste levies are expected to go up 5 or 6-fold very shortly. So that's sort of a logarithmic scale of monetary value that we need to have our community understand as well in that consultation and decision making. And then thirdly, of course, there's an environmental value as well, which is hard to put a number on, but I think there are a couple of X and Y's that we can actually populate when we go to that consultation. So it's a little bit of crystal ball gazing. I think it's we're looking into the future as to what the diversion rates will be, and also what the waste levy will be. But I think we will need to throw some numbers at that to give us some not sort of very complex simulation modelling here, but maybe 2 or 3 scenarios so that the community gets an idea of cost and value.
Right, Nick, thank you very much. Councillor Robson.
Assuming that everyone's spoken, right a reply?
Indeed.
Thank you. Yeah, the issue of consultation's obviously been raised by a number of people in the conversation, and I think I'd speak in support of the Mayor's oft quoted refrain that the why is a very, very important part of the sort of pre-engagement, engagement, consultation process with our community, and the need, as Nick Johansson's pointed out, around people understanding what we might be seeing coming that they may not be factoring into their immediate responses to what's being proposed. I also note that if we get a pay-as-you-throw, then the mean figure becomes somewhat dangerous in terms of people's reactions, and we only have to look to a current rating discussion where a number of people believe their rates are going up in the order of 5%, when in fact a number of residents believe that, when in fact, of course, that 4.7 reflects a combination of commercial rate rises and residential rate rises. So we do need to have a conversation which is at one point clear, but at another point not overly simplistic or spun. It's a challenge for us. Traditionally, we haven't been good at it, but based on what I've seen with regard to this process, I have confidence that if any team can pull that challenge off, it's this team. So thank you again. I think there will be consultation, and I think we'll do it well. I look forward to it.
Tremendous. Putting the substantive motion to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Abstentions? And carried. Thank you very much. Thanks again, team, and Nick, thank you for providing the leadership as well. We are going to move into public excluded, and after which we will take a break for 15 minutes. Yeah. So, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to move into public excluded? Deputy Mayor Salisbury and Councillor Hollis. All those in favour, please say aye. And carried. Thank you very much.
That's leaving Jessie Phillipson from KPMG.
Yes, and sorry, and Jessie Phillips will remain in this meeting from KPMG to provide professional advisory. Thank you.